Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Today on the Focus on Why podcast, I am joined by Richard Little. Welcome, Richard.
Hi there, Amy. I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank you very much for agreeing to come on the show. And what is it you'd like to share with us today?
I guess a little bit of why I've got to where I am now, I suppose. Obviously, with a focus on the why, and a little bit, as ever, anybody ever listens to me speak, I'm much more cautious than a lot of other people, but I haven't always been that way. So a little bit of that might come out, a bit of recklessness maybe from the past, possibly.
Oh, that sounds exciting. So caution and recklessness. Where do we start?
Well, it started at the very beginning, I guess, I suppose. Yeah. Or maybe not. Maybe we start where we are now and then work backwards. I don't know. I think, from where we are now, people will know me as my name, but we're also a Property Developers Academy, which used to be in training, isn't in training anymore. It still exists. We do free stuff out there now, so education for free, really. Your Land Partners, probably one of our brands that we work mostly on, or I work mostly on, which is pretty much what it says on the tin, working with landowners, sometimes developers, to sort of, maximize the margins, really, maximize the returns and minimize the hassle. That's where we generally focus, or much of my work day is focused.
So maximize the returns and minimize the
risks, I guess.
the
hassle and the risks. Not just risk, it's hassle as well, that people don't realise how much is involved. So we're in the property development space, and been in it for generations. I'm second generation, so I have personal experience, some stuff from from the 60s anyway, late 60s. When I was a kid, and used to sort of get dragged around, and we're building this and we're building that. It was of no real interest to me at the time, I recall. But I think development was basically in the DNA. So we've now got some Brins third generation. We've also got other members of the family involved in the businesses in different ways. Fourth generation at the moment, they're only investors, but no doubt they will take on whatever it is we leave behind for them to take over.
And why is it important for you to have the legacy of passing the property down generation?
It's been really interesting because it's only really over the last 5 or 6 years where I've started looking at the why and values and stuff like that. And why is it important? I suppose it started. I was given the luxury of choice, I suppose. I didn't realise it at the time, because when you're a teenager, you always think everything's terrible and your parents are against you and all that sort of stuff. But when you're looking back, I was fortunate enough. We had they'd given me the best of their knowledge and education in terms of investments and stuff. We had shares and different things like that. I had shares and unit trusts and stuff like that. Didn't really value them at the time. So my parents passed on an element of, why money's important, I suppose, and what money can do for you. And I think because I was the second generation, it just happened. I don't think there was a plan, I'll be honest. I don't think I ever sat down and say it's only in the last 5 or 6 years, when I've had more time to sit back and reflect, I think, oh yeah, maybe that's why I did that. But it's retrospective wise, I suppose.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't look at why they're doing what they're doing. They can sort of completely exist, and they're not necessarily sort of living with purpose. And that's not a problem. It's sort of horses for courses. But it just seems to be that you have got a well-engineered business, which does seem to be designed to have been set up as a legacy, albeit whether it was by accident or not. But you've been able to then pass that down and continue with it.
Yeah, I suppose so. Because as a business, it's more a collection of businesses and partnerships. A lot of the stuff we've done and still continue to do is off air. but we're not necessarily buy into, the brand and all that sort of stuff that people do. Because in our world now, anyway, development stuff, you have to set up a new company pretty much for every development, and so there's quite a churn of interest, shall we say.
In terms of how you structured your businesses and what you're working on now, how much focus is there on the present versus the future?
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, so there is a lot of focus on the present and the future. So we are quite strategic, and as property developers and anybody in this space understands, projects take a long time to deliver, often many years. So yeah, and they you have to be strategic about it. But equally, we have to pay the bills now. So we also have to look at the now. And I think for me, as the children, the next generation start coming through, over a period of time, you start listening to what their wants are, what their whys are. So almost, from my point of view, I end up borrowing their why, and I think that then becomes my why, because when you reach a certain point, where from a health, wealth, and wisdom sort of angle, you're reasonably well balanced, a little bit up, a little bit down. It's sometimes easy not to have. It's easy to lose the drive and the ambition. So I think for me, the way that the businesses are going, as whilst the kids want to do certain things, then I have to listen. As hard as that is, it's very much a transition thing. You don't just hand the reins over to somebody. Oh, there it is. I finish on Friday, I retire, and on Monday you take over. It's for me, the transition starts at the time they get into the business. The transition starts at that point then, and we're all transitioning together. And because as the businesses, grow in different directions, different business names, etc., different partnerships, different, limited companies, different collaborations. So I listen a lot more to probably the kids than they think I do.
And how much of a decision was it for you to go into the business at the start? Did you actually want to go, or was it more of a sort of gentle push?
There was a resistance. I didn't really want to join the family, in the construction and development space. We didn't used to call it development, but we used to call it construction. We're house builders, really. But the names evolved, much fancier now to call yourself a property developer. And other than amongst people that have been doing it a long time, and we think it's quite funny when people call themselves property developers. But anyway. So yeah, so no, I resisted it, as did Bryn. As when he come along, he sort of resisted it as well for a while. I wanted to join the Navy. In fact, did get accepted for the Navy. I wouldn't think of it to look at me now, but I would be one of those people dangling on the end of the rope for the air sea rescue stuff. I was a naval seaman. That's what I joined as. But it took so long, and like most things, it took too long for me. So I found something else to do by then. So so if it took me a couple of years before from leaving school to actually then relent and join the family business, because actually that was easier. So again, a privilege, really. I was able to fall back on that, so I could play around with doing something else. But actually, if it didn't pan out, I had the family to business to sort of get back into.
So did you nurture that love for the sea in other ways at all?
No,
Oh, shame.
not at all. I don't even really recall why I wanted to join the Navy. I genuinely don't. One of my daughters went on to join the Navy and served in the Gulf War and various things like that. So I sort of lived it a little bit, through her, I
Vicariously,
suppose.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So no, so I think initially it was. I don't know whether it's for everybody, but again, in your teens, you want to prove yourself. We don't always realise how fortunate we are, and some people certainly aren't fortunate. And I'm very fortunate from my background, not to have some of the pains and that some people have had to come through. So for me, it was really a case of, say, being very fortunate that I had the choice, and that's the big thing for me. All the way through, it's all about choice.
And you talked earlier about the decisions that you've made that may have been deemed cautious versus those which were more reckless. How do you discern a difference between those?
The cautious ones are the ones that worked, and the reckless ones are the ones that didn't. And I'm not being flippant there, because that's pretty much how I see people label things in their life. Things that went wrong, they will look back and say, "Oh, took the wrong decision." Things that went right, they don't question. They just went right. I mean, like I say, I'm a one trick pony. I am. I don't know anything much more than property development. So we would always look at, from a property development point of view, if people um, succeed, they only succeed because the market has been kind. If they fail because they got something wrong. And that was something that my father always sort of, almost indoctrinated, and I still maintain that. Now that, if you really dissect it, that isn't actually true, but it's not a bad way to feel. So if you succeed and make a few quid, or a lot of money, then don't put it down to your pure genius and everything else and your great team and everything. Yeah, you have to throw them a little bit or something, but put it down to the market. Because actually, when you look back over property development projects, most only make good money because the market is kind. Not all fail because the market goes against them. There's a different thing there.
So, why is choice something that you hold very dear to you?
Choice comes from, firstly, privilege, but the value choice comes from what you create yourself, in my view. So uh, uh, change only happens two ways from my point of view. And this is where the why, what feeds the why. Well, firstly, choice feeds the why, because if you've got a choice, you can pick and choose your why. But the first why is not actually choice, it's need. It's, I don't know, back to basics, I suppose, and stuff. Food and shelter. That's all we really need. But of course, anything we add above that is choice. So the choice and the why are, they're just linked. You can't take them away. So for me, that's the why is about gaining that choice. It's actually on whatever you need to do to actually create that choice. And choice, as I say, for me, it only comes two ways. It comes from baby steps. So, doing certain things in incremental sort of little bits, and it then allows you to do something. It might be money coming in, it might be something else, or giant leaps. And giant leaps generally they're the things that we like to think we've engineered and managed. A successful project, for instance. But actually, generally, those giant leaps come from other outside forces like recessions or pandemics and stuff like that, where they perhaps force the resourceful person to be even more resourceful. So that's when the giant leaps comes, or the opportunities from giant leaps. But the key is, for me, it's people having the choice and making the choice. So the correct choice, as I said before, is when things work out. The wrong choice is when they don't. But actually, that's not true either. I've heard a couple of people on various of your podcasts talk about the value of getting things wrong. And that's sort of my foundation, really. It's actually, all of the useful information that I have gathered over the years and experience from property development, is every one of it, every bit of it is from the stuff that went wrong, the stuff where we lost money, etc. I do have gained knowledge and experience from stuff that went right, but it's not as valuable because it's not so painful, possibly.
And you talked earlier about the pains, the hassles, and the risks that are involved in property. How do you teach people how to seek those pains, hassles, and
Yeah,
risks?
that's possibly part of the reason we no longer teach people, I suppose, and got out of the teaching business, because it's very difficult to teach that. You have to go through a project to feel that. You can borrow other people's experience, and where we do a lot more collaboration and partnership. So we sort of still teach to an extent, I suppose, but it's structured in a different way, and and it's actually living through a project. Going through, taking somebody through a project, because all the best will in the world, you can't stand up in front of a screen or on a Zoom call and issue slides and tell people. You can tell them lots of information, but that information, good and bad, doesn't necessarily mean too much until you've actually lived it. And if you went through a project and actually did, and you went through every aspect of what could go wrong, you would absolutely, stop everybody, and that's another reason our academy probably wasn't that successful, is because we couldn't get the amount of bums on seats, if I'm allowed to say that, because we didn't sell the super sexy, and because it isn't. But obviously, if you sell it, you get more people interested. So we were much comes back to the caution thing. Really, I've always been, cautious and not realised it. I always thought I was sort of very progressive and very get out there and get on with it, very positive, and I still maintain I am. But in the sort of spaces that I've been involved in the last 4 or 5 years, in the networking and the property sort of education companies and all that, wow, I'm the most cautious person in the room often. I'm amazingly so.
And why do you feel the need to be as vocal as you are?
Balance. I think for me, I mean, when we first started the academy, and that was Bryn's sort of baby, as it were. Let's do this, and I thought, well, okay, if we can put the right message out. But of course, ultimately, as I say, the message doesn't sell, so you then have to become a marketing company, to sell stuff you don't truly believe in. So for me now, it's a bit, I suppose, to try and disrupt a little bit, to try and give a bit of balance to people. But again, it's the same thing when you put stuff out. We recently did 100 videos in 100 days. We haven't marketed it, we haven't pushed it, but we know that not many people will watch it all. But that knowledge on there is worth tens of thousands of pounds that people will pay for education and mentorship and all that sort of stuff. The most people just don't need that. I'm not saying it's not valuable to some people, but most people just don't need that.
So with your 100 videos in 100 days, I mean, that was an incredible series. Is that something that you might turn into a book?
Don't know. Never thought about that. I have a book on the shelf that's got 70,000 words that is never going to get published. Bryn wrote a very small book that's out there and been published. Yeah, that one, indeed, that one, which is the sort of the fundamentals. We could turn that into a normal size book, should I say, by padding it out. But I don't know. I think there's some. I think the videos will probably be put together in sections and put out to people or whatever. But I think that coming back to the why put it out there, and the challenge we've had, and I've spoken to a few people about this, and I've heard it a few times, is if it's free, people don't value it, and that is oh so true. Apart from a very small number of people that sort of do value it, but those people will always value, they'll always value it anyway. But whether they pay for it or whether it's free, but most people, if we charged £1,000 for 100 videos and packaged them up and sold them and all that, we probably sell quite a lot. Maybe that's what you have to do. Maybe you have to sell, make people pay in order for them to learn. But I think overall, our message is too real for people. And that's one of the reasons, again, why I like to put it out, because most people that get involved in either investing in or becoming property developers really shouldn't, because they really have no idea what they're getting into, and that there are just so many tragic stories. I'm sure you're aware of some of them, and there's a lot more stories that don't get told because people's agendas, they don't want those stories told, they don't want them out there, because obviously that will put off their customers. One of the things that I probably got where I am now in life is I don't have a financial agenda that I've got to sell my opinion. As you get old and grumpy, not all old and grumpy people, I mean, some of them have got some valuable things to say. I'm not saying I always have, but there isn't an agenda. And people say, well, of course there is. And I suppose the only agenda is possibly about, yeah, if people take what you say and it makes a difference to them, then that's your agenda, making a difference, I guess.
Absolutely. And you say that you're sometimes perceived as too real. and I guess, a little honest, straight talking, blunt, whatever people might want to sort of choose to hear it. But it is important information that you're sort of passing on, because it isn't an easy industry to work in. And a lot of people sort of perceive it as a hobby, as a sideline to get them out of their 9 to 5 initially. And it's not as simple as that.
No, absolutely. As I sort of say, a bit of a flippant thing to sort of say people just shouldn't get involved, but I get a lot of stuff on my desk when it's too late. I mean, there are opportunities for us often, project rescue, business rescue, etc. But invariably, there will be investors, particularly, and often the developers themselves, that have lost a lot. Not just money, because obviously, money is the thing that people focus on. It's because you can quantify how much that was, but the stress, the sleepless nights, the health issues that people have. I mean, in my relatively long time in the industry, I have two people that I know personally that or knew personally that committed suicide because of they couldn't take the business stress of one was a big contractor and the other one was what we call now a developer, and when you witness something like that, it's quite it's quite meaningful, and you never forget that. And I don't think people understand what a sleepless night. I mean, I'm sure everybody gets sleepless nights, and one of the questions we used to ask people when we were mentoring, educating, whatever you want to call it, is what keeps you awake at night? Because I want to find out, really, really early whether they should be doing what they want to do. So to get to the know as soon as possible is a sort of one of my sort of mantras, I suppose, and it's getting to is this suitable for this person? It's only ever going to be our opinion, I suppose, or my opinion, but but we do occasionally get it right, and I think there are too many people. It's too easy for people to get involved. And once you're involved in a project, whether it's an investor or as a developer, you don't realize what tie that is, and if the project goes great, and how many projects go great? Hmm. If it goes as per plan, that would be great. Then yeah, fine. But people still don't realize what's involved there, and so there's yeah. I think for me, it's more like a father figure in a sense. It's a father role rather than a father figure. It's to sort of say, look, are you sure you should be doing this, people? Are you sure are you sure you understand what the risks are? And of course, they generally don't.
And you say you're a father figure. How's it been working with family?
I've known nothing else. So, and some people say you don't understand how you can work with family. Probably should ask the kids that. They probably find it challenging. I guess I worked with my father for many years, decades. And we used to have a bit of friendly banter. We used to disagree, but out of the disagreement, normally was never any grudges held or anything like that. It was just move on. So I find it great. But we have we live with an extended family as well. So and done that for decades. Got my mother lives here, my mother-in-law lives here. So we're used to family around. I wouldn't say we're exceptionally close family, but all the five kids live within about 3 miles, and none of them have gone very far yet. So that's why wife and I used to spend an awful lot of time in Spain, because if they're not going to move, we have to temporary just for our sanity.
But you didn't make it this year.
Well, we came back in March. My wife made it on one of the last flights out. To be fair,
Mm,
yeah, and yeah, fortunately, and we're not going back this winter either.
okay. So how have you found this year being with the family?
You hear the phrase life changing, probably put around a little bit too much, but for me, it has been life changing. It has really opened. We got on to the point where we're not rich, we're not poor. We're okay. We don't have massive financial wants. Other people might see, oh well, live in Spain and all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't have to cost a fortune. So, but again, very fortunate to be able to do that. Um, so I think you get onto this thing almost it's like the hamster wheel where actually, and I was enjoying it. We were enjoying it, and the wife and I spend a certain amount of time together in Spain. We also spend our own private time out there as well, which is we always find valuable. One of the challenges now, possibly, while we're not doing that. Uh, but I think from my own point of view, the changes have come because I was forced into that change, and I'm forced not to travel. And I was whilst I was enjoying it, or was I just making the most of it? I don't know. That's the question now. But now, just spending time, in captivity, as it were, it's still got its challenges because we can't do certain things with the grandkids and stuff like that. But actually, just spending time around them, just being. My days are much longer than they used to be. They're much fuller. I am more in the moment now. Whereas before I thought I was in the moment more, but now I definitely am, and I achieve more. I achieve more by probably doing less, and I think it is that hamster wheel thing where you just get on and you just, I've heard people say, not for myself, but I've heard other people say, on the corporate lifestyle, if you like, is about that. And I never really witnessed that, but perhaps I did. Well, perhaps I did experience that. So now it's been life changing because it's now a case of questioning what we're doing moving forward. And actually valuing the time with the mums doing simple things like jigsaws. We have a jigsaw. Well, we used to be every day, but that got a little bit too much. So now it's probably 2 or 3 times a week. Jigsaw and coffee. And they value it. They're both in their 80s. So what is important? In time with the kids. Valuable time using Zoom. With the grandkids and stuff, playing games on Zoom, and it's actually very much about being in the moment.
So how else do you be in the moment? How would you help people to understand what you've gained from that?
Okay, so I think from my point of view, one of the big things is that helps is for me is yoga. I mean, I'm not your normal looking yoga, whatever the term would be. But actually, we're very fortunate that daughter-in-law is a yoga teacher, so that's thing, and she makes moves that allow for my ampleness. And it's great, and that's the core. It's that. I mean, I do other bits of meditation and stuff like that, and it's finding that time every day to do something, whether it be 5 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever it might be, and to actually just have the ability to stop. I mean, I do that from a business point of view as well, but actually from a life point of view, it's actually stop. You know, think of yourself. To say, if it's only 10 minutes, for anybody, everybody's too busy. I'm too busy. We're all too busy. But if something is important to you, you will find time to do it. We always manage to wrap the Christmas presents, by Christmas Day generally, and we normally manage to make the flight. So when it's important and there is that why, that deadline, then we make it. But when it's about ourselves, I think one of the biggest things is about being kind to yourself. You are what you are, and what you do is possibly enough. It's just we punish ourselves somewhat, and say it isn't. Doesn't mean to say you can't strive to do more, but what you have done, what you have achieved today is enough. Tomorrow's another day.
No, I love that, and we do often give ourselves a hard time and say that we're not enough and that we're not doing enough. But what you were saying is that you've actually achieved more by doing less.
Yeah, absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah, really interesting. Wow, I'm glad that you've hopped off your hamster wheel, your Spanish hamster wheel, and joined us in the UK. I mean, I've been privileged to seeing a lot of your posts and a lot of your comments about the way that you're sort of seeing life, and you definitely had a new perspective. I can see that shift this year. It's been really good to see. I mean, this podcast again has been another perspective shift for me as well. It's just, and it is, again, I go back to choice. We both had the ability to choose how we've lived through the lockdown and what we've then seen. And it is interesting to see the differences in people's different perspectives on that.
Mm. Yeah, definitely, and I think I see. Yeah, obviously there's tragedy that comes out of the pandemic, obviously, and but if we take that, I think it's the best opportunity in my lifetime, not just for business, but for people to reset, for whether it's from environmental point of view, whatever it's a health point of view, and I do speak quite a bit about people now want to know what are the business opportunities. There's immense business opportunities, not just in the property sector, but you need to be in a position to actually, take make the most of that. And one of the things from a business point of view that always stops people is cash, and whilst nobody saw the pandemic coming, a lot of people in our sector, a lot of people, the wise old owls in our sector, have been hoarding cash for some time. That was all about Brexit. So the one of the benefits of the whole Brexit thing now is for some people is they've been selling and say hoarding cash, actual cash, not pretend cash. So not equity. Equity is what I call pretend cash. In a good market, possibly not, but in most other markets, then yeah, definitely. So that's a plus from Brexit, whatever side of the fence anybody is politically. So we were also we weren't over committed, and we've got a couple of projects on the go now, which yeah, there's a lot of fingers crossed stuff. There's still some firefighting to be done for lots of people, but the opportunity, if you're in a position to um, take the opportunity, is and will be immense. And but that isn't for everybody. One of the things my dad used to say, but I don't know where it really came from, is that a lot of people make a lot of money in a rising market, but fewer people make even more money in a falling market. And that goes across all sorts of investment vehicles, shall we say, not just property. So there'll be a lot, quite a lot of people will make an enormous amount of money out of the property, whatever happens to it. Doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter, but whatever they will make, because they're positioned, and their position is, they're either cash rich, or they have abilities to bring cash to the table that other people will call a safe investment. Aside from business, everybody should surely be sitting sitting back and saying, do I want to travel so much? Nothing wrong with traveling if you want to travel, but question it a little bit more. So, certainly what we're doing, we say to people, we're not going back to Spain. Will we ever go back long term? Don't know, because things change, things evolve. Um,
You mentioned about questioning, and it is about having those filters that you filter your questions and make your decisions through. So it's very much a case of, if you know your why and you know why you're doing what you're doing, those decisions get made very easily, because they're either aligned or they're not aligned with what you're doing. So when you're saying, are you going to travel so much? Well, why would you be traveling? What are you traveling for? And then you start lining yourself back to that, and why again. And it's like, I don't need to travel anymore. I've got everything I need right here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the whole why, it does evolve. We have to, why isn't it doesn't stick. It evolves, and you have to allow it to evolve as well. And why for us is key. I think, as I mentioned before, for me personally, as I get older and supposedly wiser, I borrow the whys from other people, because my why is probably now more about making a difference. You know, a bit of a sort of saying, really. But if you genuinely believe that, then you can come back to that when you're looking at every question. Am I making a difference? A positive difference we're trying to make, not just a difference. But so if so, you're happy with it and you'll go with it. So I guess really, from the why that's important to us as well from a business point of view, is the why in the people that we collaborate with. So potential landowners, business owners, partners, their why is really, really important, because their why sometimes from a purely commercial point of view gives us the in, and because once we understand it, we can structure deals potentially that will work out for them. Uh, the why is less important from contractors and consultants, It can be important, but it's less important. They become more transactional. But the other why is to understand the why of the key people around you, whether that's your family or whether that's your team, your inner circle or whatever people refer it to, because their why is it allows you the ability to manage them. It's understanding somebody's why. And I don't study management stuff and all that sort of thing, but it's pretty clear from some of the books, that actually, if you understand somebody's why, you've got a much better chance of getting the best out of them. And again, that makes a difference. So the result is the same. You make a difference. You're just using other people's whys as tools, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Well, Richard, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your why with us and sharing why you do what you do and who you do that with. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
It's been a privilege, and it has actually made me think about it more. So I thank you for that opportunity.
It is a reaffirming exercise, that's for sure. I think a lot of people, a lot of guests who come on the show have said exactly the same. And then also, that's the whole point, is to sort of encourage others to think about why they're doing what they're doing. That's the whole premise of the show. So yeah, absolutely. Box ticked from my perspective.
Perfect.
So have you got a final word for the audience, please, Richard?
Yeah, I suppose so. I've always got a word or two. I say something in 10 words if you can say it in 200 words. I think somebody said about me once. I think it is take time for yourself. Pat yourself on the back sometimes. Look to the back, and this is not just about it's not just about business. It's about health, relationships and things. Particularly when things are going tough, step back and sort of say, well, actually, things are better than they were, or I know from past experience they will be better again. So take that time to sort of step back on every aspect of your life regularly as well. So from a point of view of, just say, yeah, business, it's easier business. That's easy. That's the easy bit. It's health, relationships, and stuff that's the hardest bit. But from a business point of view, step back, review what you're doing. Is it the right thing to be doing? And continually question yourself. That isn't a negative thing. Continually questioning. And stop or pause, review, and then take whatever action is that you've decided on. And if that action is no action, that's good. It's okay.
Thank you for listening to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star Apple Podcast review. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, and become a member of my inspiring, uplifting, and positive Focus on Why Facebook group. I help people to focus on their why with clarity, uniting their passion with their purpose with a plan to create the life they truly desire. If you would like me to help you focus on your why, then please book a free 20-minute coaching call via calendly.com/Amy Rowlandson. And if you haven't already, please sign up for the Friday Focus weekly newsletter via my website, amyrowlandson.com. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.